Good morning, guys. I'm Tyler Hicks, brand ambassador for Old Town Canoe and Kayak. Today, I'm on the Upper Columbia River. It's a balmy 37-degree air temperature this morning, and I don't expect the water temperatures to be much warmer than that. So, there are certain precautions I have to take when I'm going out in cold water conditions like this. In the event that I end up in the water, which is unlikely, but possible, I want to give myself the widest safety margin possible. Today I'm going to be chasing some walleye. So hopefully today we'll get into some fish and we'll talk a little bit about the dangers of cold water, some ways that you can mitigate cold water dangers through equipment and skills. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the equipment itself that you can look into to protecting yourself against cold water. You can see today I'm at a full dry suit here, all the way down to my feet, and I've got some nice neoprene booties on. I'm going to be out in my salty. So let's get out on the water and not miss that morning bite. Let's get going. All right. Now, one of the reasons that cold water is so dangerous is that it is 26 times more conductive to heat than air is. So when you go in the water, you're going to have the heat sucked straight out of you, especially today where the water temperature is 37 degrees. The amount of time I have if I wasn't in proper immersion gear to where I'm going to be unconscious could be as little as 10 minutes. And I'm going to lose dexterity in my hands in as little as 3 minutes. So that means I have less than 3 minutes to get my kayak flipped back over and get back in my kayak if I were to roll my kayak for some reason or fall out of it. And that's why two pieces of equipment are so critical in protecting yourself in these extreme cold water conditions. And those two pieces of equipment are your PFD, because if your lungs are full of water, then hypothermia is the least of your concerns. And secondly is some sort of immersion gear to keep your body dry and reduce that ability of heat to be lost from the body. Now, as water temperatures go up, the risk declines. So, below 40 degrees, you maybe got 3 minutes before you lose dexterity loss and 10 minutes till you're unconscious. Below 50 degrees, you might have upwards of half an hour in the water, but still only 5 minutes or so of dexterity. And then once you get above 60 degrees, things jump up significantly. You might have up to an hour or two of consciousness. And so that's, for me personally, I follow what's called the 120 degree rule, which is in Fahrenheit, the air temperature plus the water temperature needs to be greater than 120 in order to not wear some sort of protective immersion gear. And today I'm well below that threshold. The air temperature and water temperature don't even add up to more than 80. So I definitely need that protective gear. My secondary rule on top of that, sort of a little caveat, is that generally I prefer water temps above 60 degrees, just because that seems to be that sort of critical threshold where the human body can compensate for heat loss for a longer period of time. Below 60 degrees, we really have a hard time keeping warm, and we are warm-blooded creatures, and we really need that heat in our body to maintain basic motor function. It goes away really quickly when you're cold. As I'm sure many of you know, if you've ever tried tying a knot when your hands are cold, it's extremely challenging. So not only can cold water accelerate the process of drowning by causing fatigue, especially if you don't have your PFD on, but additionally, just the cold water itself can cause irregular breathing and gasping, which can accelerate drowning, but it can also rapidly increase your blood pressure, causing cardiac arrhythmias and even heart attack, even in relatively young and healthy people. So having immersion gear not only sort of increases your safety margin in terms of time in the water and your ability to self-rescue and prevent hypothermia, but it can also protect you from that sort of cold water shock that can lead to other medical complications while you're in the water, or even when you come out of the water. Because if you're dry and you come out of the water, it's going to be a lot different experience than, say, coming out of the water with wet clothing and being totally soaked. Then the risk of hypothermia becomes very real even out of the water too. Now, there are 3 basic classifications of immersion gear when out in your kayak that you can use. And the one I most highly recommend is what I'm wearing today, is either a full dry suit. And these are typically made from breathable materials. So if you wear moisture wicking base layers, such as polyesters or fleece, it's going to draw moisture away from the skin and let it exit your dry suit, which helps to keep you from getting clammy and cold. Because you might be exercising like me today. I'm fighting this 2-mile-per-hour current on and off all day. Or alternatively, you can get a paddling jacket and paddling pants, which provide almost the same level of protection and can be a little bit easier to get in and out of for a lot of folks. Some of the key features I recommend looking for when shopping for your dry suit or paddling jacket and pants is look for something with non-latex gaskets on the neck and wrists. Unless you're going into really extreme conditions, that's a bit of an overkill for us because we're not whitewater kayakers, we're not sea kayakers rolling our kayaks constantly. So we don't need that extreme level of protection. So look for more comfortable gaskets like neoprene, or on this Mustang they have this closed comfort system, which is a neoprene-like substance, but even a little bit softer. So it's very comfortable around the neck and on the wrist all day. It's not cutting off blood flow to my face or to my hands. Also look for some kind of relief zipper. It's really nice to be able to relieve oneself on the water without compromising their safety or having to go to the shore and strip down to use the restroom. And there are several manufacturers out there producing dry suits with relief zippers for men and for women. So check those out. Now, the only downside of these dry suits is they can be quite cost prohibitive. You should expect to spend somewhere between $600 and $1,000 on a dry suit. A lot of people might think that that's a little bit extreme, but we are talking about your life and safety here, and it's not something you want to spare any expense on. However, there are more affordable options, including neoprene wetsuits, and depending on the temperatures, you'll need anywhere from 2mm to 5mm thickness. Those will typically cost you less than $200, but they can be very hot, especially when you're physically active, and they're very difficult to go to the bathroom in. You have to strip down or either pee through your suit. Now, there is a third kind of immersion gear that's more widely available to everybody, and that is waders, a wading belt, and a rain jacket, worn underneath your PFD, obviously. While waders, a jacket with a properly fitted wading belt, and your PFD aren't the perfect immersion gear, they do offer a lot of protection to that cold water shock initially. It will take time for water to infiltrate in around your wrists if you have this properly fitted, and because of the compression that your PFD creates and then your wading belt on your waders, it will also take time for water to infiltrate into the core of your body as well. Now, the major issue, of course, with waders is that once they fill with water, you get any water down below here, it's going to impede your ability to self-rescue and get back in your kayak. So if this is the immersion gear that you're going to opt to use, then make sure that you practice getting back in that kayak really quickly and see how long you have until water gets down in your waders. And that should give you an idea of what the potential protective capabilities of your wader and jacket PFD combination actually have. Now, besides a PFD and immersion gear, one of the other most critical components to cold water safety is having the ability to self-rescue. And that's one of the greatest things about sit-on-top kayaks, is that, you know, in the event that you roll your kayak, it's very easy to flip the kayak back over and get back into it and get dry. This is a huge advantage it has over sit-inside kayaks and canoes, which are much more difficult to self-rescue in. And I feel like it's one of those essential skills that you need if you're going to go out and fish in really cold water, because it's very challenging for somebody else to help you get back in your kayak. And you can't always rely on somebody else being there. Having that skill could potentially save your life. And so I recommend practicing self-rescue, flipping your kayak, getting back into it. You know, this is something better to do when the water temps are warmer and you can do this, but it's good to try it at least once with your immersion gear on, just so you know that you're comfortable doing it. But you should aim for the ability to flip your kayak and get back in it in under 3 minutes. Because when you're out in sub 40-degree water, that's really all the amount of time you're going to have until you really start to get degradation of your dexterity because of the cold water. So aim for 3 minutes. If you can do better, that's great. You know, with immersion gear, you should in theory have more than 3 minutes, but everybody's going to vary on their response to cold water exposure. So I always just say shoot for that 3 minutes and your odds of survivability go way up. All right, so that does it for the day. I ended up getting my limit of 8 walleye and was able to safely do so and comfortably do so with my immersion gear, with my PFD, and knowing that if the worst happened, I would be able to get back in my kayak safely, stay warm, and stay dry. All right, be sure and check out the blog for more information about cold water kayak fishing safety. We'll see you next time out on the water. If you have any questions, hit us up in the comments section below. Bye, guys.